And we'll start the hard recording again. Now, we don't know what the weather is going to be for the second session. We didn't know it was going to be raining for the first one. Maybe do we get some bright weather happening here that will provide us some representative laps, I believe, unless do we get more rain. Well, I tell you what, still very gloomy looking here for Q2. Now, remember, only the top 10 advance to the next session, but at least for the time being, the track is dry, so we will have some representative laps on the table. I'm going to open my can of drink here. This is always my favorite. Shall we do this ASMR? Oh yeah, brilliant. ASMR with Hotspot here. DWCJ is going to be the first driver out on track in our qualifying session here for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Also, the Elite Tier kind of memorial race celebration of life for that of Knick Knack Paddywhack. Taken from us way too soon at the age of 25, not all that long ago, rather recently as it is. I said it on the last broadcast attempt that I did as well. I'll say it again here. I didn't really know Knick Knack that well, but what I did know is this. Every time that you saw him on track, I only managed to cast a couple of his races, but that was a guy that was going to give 110% every single time he was out there. And I tell you what, there was a very solid chance he was going to end up on the podium as well. Very talented driver, very fun to watch, and a very big part of CCRL from what I take it. And he had been for the longest of times. That's again, I've only been here since I think the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was my first actual race with this league. So I haven't been around that much to know him all that well. But I did know that the displays he put on in this league, and he was leading the championship by quite a lot as well. The displays that he put on were second to none, and yeah, it's a very tough one here today. But what we do have is this. It's going to be DWCJ making his way through turns 13 and 14 here. He'll be the first driver to begin an actual qualifying attempt. We haven't had that so far today. We've only just had the practice session, which we had earlier in the wet. But DWCJ down the pit straight, heading towards the first corner. It's a long pit straight this. A lot of overtakes are going to be made here into the very tight right-handed corner of turn 1, otherwise known as the Valtteri Bottas bowling alley into that first corner. Got to be careful on exit. That outside curb will send your car spinning, and traction a little bit limited exiting turn 1 there. Down the hill in towards turn 2, as you just saw, you'll have DRS there. Doesn't matter too much. Not many moves being made. Through turn 3, up the hill to the toughest corner, one of the toughest corners in F1, this uphill left-hander off camber of turn 4, very difficult. Through the winding turn 5 now, if you hit that curb on the inside of the apex, you will spin in towards the worst chicane in Formula 1, seconded only to the Neuville chicane, and the one in Spain and the one in Miami. Those section of the tracks do need to be gotten rid of. I will stand on the top of that hill and wave that flag until I die. And, well, that's all there has to be said about that. Through the right-hander of turn 11 now, that's where we saw the AlphaTauri of Curveball actually crash in the initial session, the Q1. And that's why he's not here now. DWCJ making his way through 13 and 14. As I had mentioned before, an interesting thing I would actually love to see, imagine if they had some Zandvoort banking in these final two corners there. That would be fantastic for the circuit. But across the line, it's a 1:16.658. That's a good lap from DWCJ. Good to have one on the board immediately here. We do have Charlie Gulf making his way down the pit straight now, and across the line it goes. He'll cross it at 166 mile an hour. He is well behind that of DWCJ. About a second and a half. John the Prince had gone fourth, but Reimer 1:16.463 beats DWCJ only by 0.2 of a second, so some competition to be had there amongst the top two. Remember, only the top 10 drivers make it through to Q3, the final qualifying session. We started with 15 in Q1. Curveball crashed out. He's not here. We should have 15 drivers in Q2. That's why we don't. Only the top 10 will move on. The bottom 4 will be eliminated. For the time being, that belongs to Sepulveda. Did I get that correctly? Sepulveda? Sepulveda? Well, I'm not sure. Either way, that'll belong to him. Bong It, Owa, and Angry Walrus. We did just have Johnny Damon, the former teammate of Nick Nat, go 1:16.107. Those two have dominated the constructor standings throughout the majority of this season. Walrus then tops that by about half a second. A matter of fact, just about 4/10, 1:15.700. New fastest lap here in Q2. Across the line behind him, I believe, is Sepulveda making his way onto a timed lap, his first one of the day. He's gone to the medium tires. It's an interesting choice here. Not a 4-1, to be honest. Pontiac Bandit, John the Prince, Hemphead, and now Sepulveda have all gone to the medium tires, getting that bit of practice in. Now, remember that first session we kind of figured was going to be the practice session, but again, that was all in the wet, and assuming that it stays dry throughout the remainder of the day, we are going to see these drivers take to the mediums, and that's why we've seen so many here. These are the first dry laps of the day that these drivers may be running. So he's making his way through the 6 and 7 chicane now. Next up to the line, I believe, was just the Ferrari of Hemphead, who has finished one. That's not really a representative lap from him. We do have Owa making his way up through turn 5 now in towards the chicane. Around the final corner is the McLaren of John the Prince. I don't believe he's on a representative one here. No, he's not, but across the line and down the pit straight he goes. Does he perhaps have his... It does appear that he's going to be going forward here, 190 miles an hour into the first corner. Exits the first corner nicely. DRS activated as he makes his way down. Towards turn 2 here, curb on the way in. A lot of apex curb there. That's another one of those raised curbs that could spin the car. Thankfully, that corner is more off camber than going up through turn 5. That's why it's not going to happen. But turn 4 here, let's see how he takes it. 2 downshifts there on the way in. Up through 5 now. Got to be careful of the apex. That will send your car spinning. Takes it nicely into the worst chicane in Formula 1 here, turn 6 and 7. Little bit of wiggly on the way out. Nothing to really complain about for the time being for John the Prince. I think he's, at the moment, doing okay. He's in a sea of other drivers currently on those medium tires. He'll have at least probably 1 or 2 more attempts here. He's quicker by about half a second at the moment. That'll put him roughly P7, P6 maybe. If he's able to finish out the lap on a good note here, making his way through 13. We do have the Haas of Charlie Gulf on an outlap. Owa, John the Prince, and Sepulveda, the only drivers remaining on track. Across the line is that of John the Prince, and he's gone 8th. A little bit slower, I think, maybe through that third sector. Either way, he's improved by 5.5 tenths of a second. He's gone up to 8th. He's within 8/1000ths of that of Charlie Gulf for the 7th spot. So that's a very good lap on what is now 3-lap-old medium tires. 7 minutes and 50 seconds remaining in the session here, so we're going to go ahead and assume that these drivers are going to be making their way into the pit lane very shortly, and that's going to be the end of this first round of timed laps here, although what we do have now is that of Shiesty making his way back out on track, what I believe is one of the first drivers to... No, he was on the softs as well. Okay, I thought it maybe had tried the mediums. No, only 4 drivers tried the mediums. John the Prince, Pontiac, Sepulveda, and Hemphead, the 4. Into the pits now is the Red Bull of Owa, so I think we now have pretty much 3 out of the different 4 drivers that we did have now. Pontiac Bandit on the track, Charlie Gulf, so the pair of the Haas drivers in AlphaTauri, and the McLaren of John the Prince, who's going to be making his way in here. We do have that of Charlie Gulf about to get one going here, so we'll go along with the Haas driver as he's going to make his way down the pit straight towards turn 1. You know, despite this track being a very high downforce circuit, some of these guys have been in the upper 190s making their way to that first corner. Down the pit straight he goes. DRS activated here. Let's see what his top speed is when he gets into the braking zone. He's going to max at 191 on the way to the first corner. Pretty good. Heavy over the apex of the first corner. A lot of the times we'll see drivers take that a little bit wider. Not the case. Down the hill with DRS activated again towards turn 2. Off camber left-handed corner. Does sometimes provide some great racing. To this third one here, the funnel of kind of turn 3, the exit creeps up on you there, and it's a very fast right-handed corner as well as the next left-hander up the hill here. Somehow he's kept it within track limits. He's a 10.5 quicker through sector 1. Up through turn 5 now, in towards the chicane. 6 minutes and 10 seconds remaining here. And a little bit indecisive on the turn into turn 6, but otherwise lap looking pretty good so far here for Charlie. Remember, the top 10 will advance to the next session. Charlie Gulf for the time being on a good one. Here's turn 11. This corner has caught some drivers out by surprise. He's gone purple sector 2, 2.5 tenths quicker. I'd say the difficult part of the lap is over now for Charlie Gulf in through turn 13. And turn 14 after this. He's got a wide berth on the way in, trying to carry as much speed on the way out as he possibly can. DRS gets activated at 140 miles an hour to the line, only 6th. Improves by 0.2 of a second, but I have to think that somewhere along the line he's lost a little bit of time. 6th for the time being, that may help him. I'm not too sure if he's going to be completely safe from elimination, but we'll have to wait and see. That's a not bad first attempt. Pontiac Bandit in the time being, I believe, has gone P6. Not all that far ahead of Charlie. Matter of fact, P6 on the way down to P11, within 0.7 of a second of each other. As that of Shiesty's actually just gone 6th. He's improved by quite a lot. Gets Pontiac Bandit by about 5/100ths there. Sorry, more than that. Yeah, 7/100ths. Good math. I can't do math. But a good lap from Shiesty, so both the Haas drivers in the top 10 at the moment. The 4 drivers being eliminated for the time being belong to Manson, Sepulveda, and the pair of the Ferraris, Hemphead and Bongit. Hemphead on a timer now. I'm not too sure how he's doing. Bongit's still in the pit lane, yet to put together a timed attempt. He's got 4.5 minutes to do so. And we do have our provisional top spot of Angry Walrus coming back out on track. By the way, both Aston Martins on an outlap now. Hemphead around the final corner to the line. He goes only 12th, 1:18.527. He does improve by half a second, but that is not going to be enough. He'll have to get that car really quickly back to the pit lane and then back on out if he wants any sort of attempt at getting into Q3. For the time being, he's well on the outside looking in. Sepulveda, I think, maybe kind of putting this lap to bed here, may start a new one as he's making his way out of turn 11 now. To the line he goes, and yeah, he's slower by 8.5 seconds through that sector, so we can assume the Alpine's going to start a new one here in just a little bit. Manson making his way. That's coming out of turn 9 on an outlap as well. John the Prince. And that Aston Martin of Angry Walrus also. So it looks like the next driver to begin a timed lap will be the Alpine of Sepulveda as he makes his way out of the final corner, down the pit straight. Time lap beginning here for the Alpine driver. Top speed we've seen so far, at least that we've witnessed, 191. He will get that one by 2 miles an hour there, 193 into the braking zone for the Alpine. Bit of a dangerous game to play, wanting top straight line speed when this is a very high downforce track. Could he potentially be caught out by that, trying to get too much speed in the one DRS zone, and then the rest of the track missing out on time because there's not enough downforce on that Alpine? That could very well be the case, although 2.5 of a second quicker through Sector 1. For the time being, still not safe. He'll need quite a lot here on this attempt. Nicely through turn 5, 2 minutes and 45 seconds remaining here, through the worst chicane in Formula 1, and on the way out. He's held it nicely. He's actually taking the line quite well, has to be said. Through turns 8 and 9 coming up now. Quick left-hander of turn 10 and into the very tricky turn 11. Timing line on the way out of turn 11 here. He's got to hold this one nicely, and he does. 6.5 quicker through Sector 2. For the time being, this may... If he can put together a good final sector, this may put him into the top 10. Whether or not he's going to stay there is a separate question, but at least for the time being, he knows he's got a halfway decent attempt going here. Out of turn 13, through turn 14 now. Following him behind, I believe, is the McLaren of John the Prince. We'll catch with him in a second. But across the line goes Sepulveda. Does improve by a net nearly 0.4 of a second there. Does not escape the bottom 4. John the Prince on the way out of the final corner now. DRS activated for him, and the McLaren driver across the line does go 7th, 1:17.605. Improves by 3.5 of a second. 4/100ths between himself and the AlphaTauri of Pontiac Bandit. Another 4, actually less than that, 3/100ths between himself and Manson for 9th. And then after that, another 5/100ths back to Charlie Golf. There's a lot of drivers right on the cusp of being eliminated and being promoted here, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. We have the Aston Martin. I believe that is Manson making his way through 2 now, although I think he's just completed one. We got 1:20 remaining here. Well, Walrus, this is going to be the time to look out for him. Currently a 1:15.7. Has him at that provisional top spot. Remember, still Q3 coming up here in just a little bit. Johnny Damon on a timed lap making his way into turn 1. Reimer doing the same. This one may get interesting here. There's not a lot of track room separating Johnny Damon and Reimer. That may be something to look out for. Walrus somehow doesn't invalidate track limits exiting turn 4. That one got very close. A little bit of a wiggle getting back onto the steering input, exiting 5. Through the chicane now, 6 and 7. His teammate, a bit of a lock up there in front of him. That may have perhaps just a little bit, maybe distracted him. I mean, you see a lockup that big in front of you, your tendency is to slow down to avoid. Out of turn 11 now, does Walrus improve? No, he's slower by 1/1000th of a second. Identical times, pretty much, going through Sector 2. Bit of a wiggle on the back end there, and that will pretty much put this timed attempt to bed, unless he's previously made another mistake going through Sector 3 here, so we can assume that that's going to be the end of Q2 here for Angry Walrus. Across the line either way, to the line he goes, and yes, slower by 7/100ths. Johnny Damon on the way next. And you have to think, I think maybe Manson, his error, or at least getting out of the way of his teammate, may have influenced that just a little bit. Johnny Damon improves by 0.3 of a second, stays second, a tenth behind. Reimer will stay third, despite improving by 5.5 of a second. The top three cars now within the 1:15s. DWCJ, not him. The AlphaTauri Pontiac Bandit's gone fifth. We're just looking at now Charlie Gulf and Sepulveda, the last two drivers here to not put together laps here. Does perhaps Charlie Gulf have enough? No, he's backed off. It's into the pit lane. That's the end of the qualifying session for Charlie Gulf. Sepulveda is purple sector 2 and quicker by 3.5 of a second. He'll need a little bit here, but he may be able to find something special through the final sector and push Manson into the bottom four and eliminate him from qualifying. Across the line goes the Alpine, and he goes 10th, 1:17.657, improves by 0.7 of a second, and less than 3/100ths between Sepulveda and R. Manson. The driver being eliminated there, he's out of qualifying. Sepulveda, a beautiful attempt there on his final go to put himself into the 10th place and in through to Q3. We've just had the McLaren of John the Prince go P8. Very competitive midfield here, has to be said. The top three competitive in their own right, but what is that? That first second expanding from DWCJ in fourth down to Sepulveda in 10th. Matter of fact, Manson as well. Positions 4 through 11, separated by less than a second there. Charlie Gulf not all that far off either. But just going to be waiting for Johnny Damon to make his way into the pit lane here. And that's the end of Q2. And the sunshine out once again here for Q3. Thankfully enough, again, we had the rainy Q1. That's pretty much served as a practice session more than anything else. But here we are, top 10 drivers vying to get their way towards the top end of the grid here. Again, you'd have to give the advantage to the trio of Reimer, Johnny Damon, and Angry Walrus, but anything is possible. And even behind that, from DWCJ on the way back to that of Sepulveda, any of these positions are up for grabs here. I genuinely have no predictions, none of which are going to be correct about who finishes where. That part's for sure. But what we do know is it's going to be that of DWCJ out on track here, along with the memorial of Knick Knack Paddywhack, which we'll go over in just a second here. The drivers all sporting the black helmets tonight. Some even changing their Discord user profile images to the blacked out CCRL logo. But in this race here, it is important to mention, I haven't mentioned it yet, there will be we'll have the formation lap. That first lap will be no more than ceremonial. It will be a parade lap on the first go round after the lights go out. Single file, no overtaking. And this race will, I think, officially begin once they exit the first corner on lap 2 of the Grand Prix. So the formation lap will happen, lights will go out, they'll do the parade celebratory lap. Well, I say celebratory, that's not the right way to describe it. They'll do the remembrance lap there. And then we'll get racing, exiting turn 1, down the hill towards turn 2. It's a very interesting way to start the Grand Prix. I think it's absolutely correct, but absolutely deserved for the driver that Knick Knack was. And will always be, it will be. I mean, again, I'm going to say this again. I did not get an opportunity to see him much in my very limited time here in CCRL, but what I did see of him was an unbelievably uber-talented driver that you could have the guarantee that it was going to be top 5 in anything in any given competition he was going to be in. But he worked for it, and well, he successfully worked for it time and time again. It'll be that of DWCJ on the first timed attempt of the session here. Exits the corner, up the hill through turn 4. Well, there's no real indication of how well this lap is going to be for now. 9 minutes and 20 seconds remaining of the 12-minute Q3 session. Through Sector 1, obviously purple, into the worst chicane in Formula 1, as I've dubbed it, and will continue to do so. A little bit squirrely on exit there. We've seen drivers have some difficulties going through that section of the track. Some drivers will choose to kind of go in the gutter in between the curb and the grass on the outside. Some will just ride the curb. Some will try to avoid the curb. DWCJ has kind of done both there. He's not really picked a proper exit point of that corner. In through 13 and 14 coming up here in a second. The Williams will be followed with that of, I believe it's going to be the AlphaTauri of Pontiac Bandit, although I don't think it's a representative lap from him. Across the line is DWCJ. 1:15.981. Only the 4th driver of the day to make their way into the 1:15s. That's incredible for DWCJ. He did not make the 1:15s in Q2, and here he is. Well, I tell you what, he's put the top 3 on notice. That trio of Reimer, Johnny Damon, and Walrus now have an additional driver to look out for here. John the Prince, 1:17.783. So Urban, John the Prince, and Pontiac Bandit not having representative laps at the moment. Sepulveda on an outlap here, making his way through turn 9. Owa about to finish his here, coming out of turn 14, and across the line he goes. Not a bad lap here from Owa, and he's gone second. 1:16.921. It looked a much better lap initially than what it turned out to be. 1:16 is not bad. It's definitely better than what I can do, but that's not really going to carry him all too far here in this session, has to be said. Reimer, though, a 1:15.730. For the fastest lap of the session so far. It was that of Johnny Damon, 1:15.7. That took the top spot in Q2. So that is telling me we are right on it here. Johnny Damon, 1:15.627. Gets Reimer there by less. Well, actually, what is that? Just over 1/10 of a second. Yep. I mean, that is razor-thin margins there. Mind you, the blink of an eye is less than 0.2 of a second, by the way. So, what is it actually? I think it's like 3.5 to 4/10 of a second is a blink of an eye. So quicker than a blink of an eye, and even quicker than that, the gap now between Angry Walrus and Johnny Damon, less than 1/10, as Walrus 1:15.544. That is outright the fastest lap that we've seen all day so far. That is a monstrous effort from the Aston Martin driver. Johnny Damon, definitely right there in amongst the pack. He's going to be right there when it comes into it. Reimer, I would say, kind of on the outside looking in here for all intents and purposes. He's not all that far behind, mind you. Uh-oh. Stream go dead? What happened? What was that? Why is the stream gone? Are we having errors? Shouldn't be. Oh no. Why am I not seeing the stream anymore? I'm sorry, I will fix this. Just give me 1 second. The stream has died again. It's a little odd. Okay, so once again, the stream has decided to crap out here. I don't really know why, but we should be good to go again. Well, anyways, what I do know is this. We do have Angry Walrus provisionally on pole. He's ahead of the Johnny Damon by less than a 1/10 of a second here. Reimer, as we were going to say before the stream crapped out there. What we were going to say is this. Reimer slightly on the outside looking in here. He's really not all that far off when you think about it, but and also DWCJ well within this picture for the time being. 4.5 minutes to go. Starting a new hard recording here. DWCJ, the first driver back out on track here for what will be his final attempt of the session. 4.5 tenths of a second separate himself from provisional pole. He will probably need, I would think, at least a 6/10 improvement to solidify the front row. I would assume that Walrus and Damon and Reimer all have something to look out for here. Whether or not that's the case is going to be yet to be seen. Oh, don't tell me the stream has gone dead again. No, I mean, I don't know. For God's sakes. I have no idea why this stream isn't working. Sorry, I hate to take away from the proceedings here, but we are having an issue with the stream playback at the moment. I have no idea why it's not working as it should be. I mean, this just does not make sense to me. Sorry, has to be said. Once again, we're just going to have to go via the Jesus here and go for the hard recording, because quite honestly, it doesn't appear to be working anymore, and I don't really understand why that's happened. This will be now the third time that the stream has just decided to stop. So we will fix that at a later date, but what we do have now is this. 2 minutes remaining here in the qualifying session. We've got DWCJ on a final timed attempt. He's making his way through turn 13 and eventually 14 after that. And into the pit lane goes DWCJ. That's going to be it. That's probably the end of his qualifying session here. He's not going to have enough time to get back out on track. That will be it. Johnny Walrus on an outlap now. Johnny Damon making his way through Sector 2. Reimer about to begin one here as he makes his way through 13 and 14 now. Coming through the final corner is that of Reimer. Let's see what the Mercedes driver has to offer here. He's got one final attempt to put him on pole for the third to last round of the season, into the first corner. A driver that does not typically enjoy having the benefit of straight line speed. That's probably what's helped him here, put him into the mix relatively. It's one of those drivers, again, that likes having the downforce, likes having the car kind of on the limit at all times. That's what he's good at, and that's why he's this far in the grid at the moment. 50 seconds remaining here. It'll be the Haas of Scheisty, I believe, completing one now, either that or starting one, couldn't tell you. Reimer, a tenth quicker through Sector 1. Hesitant getting on the throttle, exiting turn 5 there. Maybe a little bit of an error. We'll have to wait and see. Looks fine going through Sector 2 and the chicane. DWCJ has retired, that being in the pit lane. Angry Walrus only about to begin his timed lap now. Johnny Damon going through the first corner. Reimer down the back straight now, a tenth and a half quicker. For the time being, that will not be enough, I don't think. 15 seconds remaining here. He'll have provisional pole. I don't believe he'll keep it. He'll have to put together a good one here, exiting turn 13 and on through turn 14 now. 5 seconds remaining. Does he even have the ability to start another one here? He just may. And he does. 1:15.502 for Reimer. Fastest lap provisional pole. Ahead of Angry Walrus by 4/100ths. It'll be that of Johnny Damon up next. That was a hefty error, I think, coming out of the chicane there. For the time being, I think he may be slower. Going through Sector 2, another error coming out of turn 9. Yeah, I tell you what, this is not looking the best attempt here for Johnny Damon. He's slower by 2.5 tenths of a second for the time being. So Johnny Damon, we can assume his qualifying most likely done here. Reimer, who we thought was on the outside looking in, is now really well in a position to take provisional pole here. For the time being, he has it. Johnny Damon out of the final corner. I don't believe he'll improve. He doesn't. Slower by 2 tenths of a second. Angry Walrus is quicker by 2 tenths of a second through Sector 2. And coming through the final corner now, does Angry Walrus have enough to get on pole? Yes, he does. 1:15, 2:71. Are you kidding me, Walrus? I mean, that is one of the better laps you will ever see of the Hungaroring. Mind you, we thought it was impressive getting into the 1:15s. He's gotten well into the low 1:15s there. Reimer in the mid 1:15s. I mean, that we thought was going to be a stretch, but Walrus has, well, for lack of better definition, he's not, I don't want to say he's blown that one out of the water, but, well, that's about the best lap you'll see. So Walrus taking pole here, Reimer second, Johnny Damon third, DWCJ fourth, Shiesty fifth, Urban sixth, John the Prince 6th, Urban 7th, Owa 8th, Sepulveda 9th, and Pontiac Bandit, Jorg starting grid, starting top 10 for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Angry Walrus, one of the best laps you'll see, and he's done it in the clutch. In the final moments of the session, mistakes could have been made, he didn't make them. Pole position for the Aston Martin. Right, so we've loaded back into the session here for what is now the second time I've had to leave and rejoin. Formation lap should be getting underway here shortly. Maybe not. So, once again here, we'll tell you again here, we'll do the formation lap, and then we're going to have one lap, parade salute lap of honor here for that of Nick Knack, who was taken from us way too soon at the age of 25. And that lap is going to be a silent lap. And then we'll get going once the grid exits the first corner on the second lap. So Urban has given the command. Again, we will have formation lap. It's not going to matter. Once again, this first lap of the Grand Prix will be purely... it'll be a silent lap, and we'll get going after the first corner on lap 2 of the Grand Prix. And as they complete the first lap of the Grand Prix, they'll make their way down towards the first corner for what will be the beginning of this race. As Nick Knack would have wanted it, and as we will have, this race will be underway as they exit the first corner. Virtual safety car, I guess, still out on track here, but for all intents and purposes, this track is now green flag, and we are underway here in Hungary. As they make their way down into the second corner, Walrus has a drive-through penalty for jumping the start as well as that of Urban. Here's a look at the tires, as it looks as if we've got some early action already. It's that of Charlie, Gulf, and Manson side by side through the first couple of corners. Contact happening there. Charlie has taken the inside and has gotten the spot. Contact being made for sure, but that's natural on such a narrow circuit like this. Manson goes wide, exiting 4. That'll surely be a track limits warning for him. 2 drivers with drive-through penalties, that of Walrus, that of Urban. They will have to serve those. A little bit of play on the back end there for Walrus. Reimer in second. It'll be that of Johnny Damon third. DWCJ still fourth as they make their way out of turn 11. This time by, we'll have DRS activated. They won't get it until lap 4, as there's only just the one detection zone on this track. That's exiting turn 13, which Walrus going through now. And that one also exists for that of coming out of turn 1. So DRS activated. They will not have it until lap 4, but down the pit straight they go. Do we see any moves? Urban is serving his drive-through penalty now. John the Prince really wanted to look in behind there of that of Shiesty, and it looks as if, well, there's cars jumping all over the screen. I could have swore DWCJ had a bit of an error. That's not been the case. Down towards turns 2, towards turns 2 and 3. Charlie, Gulf, and Manson side by side again. Charlie Gulf goes round the outside. Does he maintain the inside line going through 3? Yes, he does. And he's made that maneuver happen in a very difficult portion of the circuit. Very nicely done for Charlie Gulf, now up to 10th as they make their way through the 6 and 7 chicane here. Johnny Damon a little bit further behind off of Reimer. He's about a second to the deficit of the Mercedes ahead, who will eventually take the lead of the Grand Prix. Albeit it's just a drive-through penalty for Angry Walrus, he will probably, well, he'll be at the tail end of the grid, but at least he will be in a position to still be competitive. Urban is a 10-second disadvantage to that of Curveball. He is way back there. Bongit has been disqualified from the session for, I guess, not getting off the grid. We thought Formation Lap was going to be on. As it turns out, it didn't, so I was taken a little bit by surprise there, but that's beside the point. DRS will be activated this time by as they exit the final corner. Down the pit straight they go. Does John the Prince have anything to Shiesty here, as he's going to look down to the inside, the driver on the softs versus the driver on the mediums, and it's going to be a relatively easy one there for John the Prince, making the move happen, but Shiesty looks back down to the inside, and, well, he's not going to have it, but that was a very close attempt from the Haas driver, very similar on pace, despite the McLaren ahead being on the softs, and with DRS, that's a very fast Haas, as it turns out, for the time being. Got ourselves a half a second now between DWCJ and that of Johnny Damon. 14 cars remain in this Grand Prix. Walrus has served his drive-through penalty 5 seconds behind Curveball. 5 seconds behind Walrus is that of Urban. Walrus still on the hard tires in which he started the Grand Prix on, so he's not had any sort of advantage from having to serve his pit stop here. Well, a drive-through penalty, that's why it's not been a pit stop, but, either way. Making their way through turn 11 now. Reimer's got a second and a half advantage. Here we go. DWCJ looking for the outside on Johnny Damon down the stretch going towards turn 12, and he's got him on the inside. Does he stay there through 13? Yes, he does. Still down to the inside, and somehow that Williams is going to hold on. Johnny Damon still now on the inside as they go through 14. The Williams round the outside. Who was ahead or who was behind at the detection point? It was going to be the Alfa Romeo of Johnny Damon. Will have DRS down the straight now, heading toward the first corner. It's a brilliant battle for the second spot between these two here. Johnny Damon to the inside. Walrus is going to try to stick it on the outside there. Johnny Damon took too much of the curb on the inside going through turn 1. He had a bit of an overcorrection that he had to have made to keep the car in a straight line, and he's lost the position again. Great battles here for the second spot. And now that's allowed John the Prince and Shiesty kind of into this battle. They're not immediately battling for positions here, but at least they have the cars ahead in sight, as Reimer has a 2.5 second advantage over DWCJ. Johnny Damon looking for it here, not quite close enough. Hemphead, a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. Unfortunate there for the Ferrari driver. But now as they make their way towards in through turns 10 and eventually in towards turn 11, now this is where DWCJ had actually started this overtaking process on Johnny Damon last time, which was a bold maneuver, by the way. That's not a very long straight exiting from turn 11 down and towards turn 12. How DWCJ got that good of an exit, I'll never know, but he has done. Johnny Damon, now that's the second or third time now we've seen that car have a bit of a wiggle coming out of a corner. He'll lose out to the second on DWCJ now, and as it turns out, Johnny Damon was not close enough to have DRS this time by. It's going to be up to John the Prince around the outside, and Johnny Damon, a relatively poor fifth lap of the Grand Prix, will lose second and will now potentially lose third as the McLaren down to the inside. And we do have a yellow flag. It's going to be the Red Bull of Owa off there. He's had some sort of mistake coming out of turn 1. We'll check with that in a minute. It's still John the Prince versus Johnny Damon here. Johnny Damon was able to hold off the charging McLaren from behind as Owa falls down to 13th. We do now have Angry Walrus caught back up to the battle here. Urban still behind by 3 seconds back to Owa. Owa's fallen off as well. So Angry Walrus gets around Hemphead, is now in position to at least remain competitive in this Grand Prix. And oh, by the way, that's about that is the driver that will be competitive this whole time. So am I surprised? Absolutely not, despite the penalty he had to serve. And again, I think the drivers were under the impression that we were going to have the formation lap on, and that wasn't the case. So a bit of a miscommunication there, but at least they were all in communication about the lap of honor there. That's really good to see. Down the pit straight they go now. John the Prince will have DRS this time, and I think he will be able to get around Johnny Damon. Oh, hang on, he's not really that close. No, Damon will defend the inside. John the Prince does not get it close enough to make the move into the first corner. Will he now? Sepulveda and Pontiac Bandit side by side as it looks as if the Alpine will almost, yet finally does, get around the AlphaTauri in question. It's a great move there from Sepulveda. I tell you what, this guy made it into Q3 by the skin of his teeth, and somehow now is in a position where he could be battling for the top 5 here, and not all that far away of a distance. We do have Curveball Angry Walrus now battling behind R. Manson now. It could be argued that it was that of Angry Walrus who kind of interfered with the final attempt of Angry Walrus of his teammate. Of course, Walrus, I think, still did get provisional pole, but I think he certainly could have improved on one of his more final attempts there, as his teammate wanted to get out of the way from him, and there was a big plume of smoke from the lockup provided by Manson, and that may have taken Angry Walrus for a curveball. That was his second to last attempt. We do now have, that's the Haas of Shiesty, and he's around exiting turn 13, bit of an unorthodox place to actually lose the car, but he's done just that. I think the back end's just gotten away from him there. And, well, he's got the car back in a straight line here. He'll have to take his time and drive it easy as the tires begin to cool. Down the pit straight they go. Closest battle, Pontiac Bandit was about 2 tenths behind Sepulveda. Not close enough to make something happen. Good battle here from 7th on back as down the hill towards turn 2 they go. And as they make their way now, we have another yellow flag. Owa, unfortunately, has spun the car coming out of turn 1. And we'll check with that very carefully here. Oh, he is beached on the curb. He has safely reset to track there, which I still don't know if that's really allowed in this league. In a couple of leagues I know that's not a thing. However, recently in the Midwest League, we did implicate that if you are in a position where you do need to reset the track, you can do that safely, and that is a prime example of what Owa's done there. He's made sure he's in a good enough position to do so, and his race will continue, albeit now 16 seconds behind Urban for the 13th spot. So once again, a good battle here happening in the tail end of the midfield. Angry Walrus, after having to serve his drive-through penalty, in position to try to make something happen over Curveball. Curveball, mind you, binned it in the Q1 session, which all he needed to do was not crash, and he crashed. And that's why he did not put together a Q2 or 3 effort. He started P15, and didn't make it to Q2 because of his DNF. He'll be taking down the inside now of Angry Walrus. Curveball up 5 positions since the beginning of this race. We had an overtake not all that far ahead. Pontiac Bandit has gotten around, or has perhaps stayed ahead of the Alpine of Sepulveda. And it looks as if still a good battle happening here. I think the Alpine may have some trouble here for the AlphaTauri. No, he's going to back off. By the time they get to turn 4, and we have a yellow flag at the back, it's the Haas of Shiesty yet again. The 2 Aston Martin drivers inverting positions, and Owa has, retired to the pit lane. I made that a lot more crazy than it needed to be. Well, you see a car DNF, you think something's happened, and Owa had already had 2 spins on the day. I thought maybe he had bit the dust for good there. And, that's not the case. He's just retired in the pit lane. So, a bit of a buzzkill, I know. But, anyways, so that whittles the grid down to 13. Exiting turn 11 now is that of Sepulveda. He's trying to make something happen here. Back to Pontiac Bandit. He's been all over the tail of this AlphaTauri all day long. He's on the soft tires still. Now, these soft tires, I think, might be pretty good at this Hungarian circuit. They're on 8 laps old already. And for the time being, the fall-off, well, I don't know. I guess he's gotten around him there somehow. It doesn't appear that the fall-off for the soft tires is all that much. They're hanging in there quite good. Charlie Gulf is now going to try to look down to the inside of Pontiac Bandit into the first corner. We have a yellow flag. John the Prince has lost the car coming out of the first corner, and he'll try to get the car back going here. Doesn't appear that he's hit anything, and the track stays green. Well, making their way through turn 2 now. Reimer has a 3.5 second advantage over DWCJ. Johnny Damon 0.6 of a second behind DW here as they make their way through the chicane. Shiesty's gone and retired in the pit lane. That brings us down to 12, and we're not even a third of the way through this Grand Prix. We do have Charlie Gulf. Well, I tell you what, he's within a close margin here of that of Pontiac Bandit. I'm a little surprised. Maybe a little bit of contact on the way into the chicane. But the track stays green. Walrus watches on, knowing that he's got to use up his tires in order to get himself back into a competitive position in this Grand Prix. He's on the outside looking in after the error of jumping the start. And as they file through turn 12 now. Oh, that's a slide from Charlie. And to the inside, thankfully he's not hit anything, but unfortunately the day goes from bad to worse for the Haas team, as that's now Charlie Gulf losing out on positions on an error. And as they exit, well, we'll check with that one in a minute. Johnny Damon, 0.3 of a second. I don't really think he's going to get him here. We'll go back to this battle. Walrus down to the inside. Gets Pontiac Bandit for the 6th spot. Very nicely done. Pontiac Bandit still in a position maybe to find some sort of charge as Sepulveda has lost it. Coming out of turn 1, and while we thought that the softs were hanging in there pretty good, he's either gotten too generous on the throttle or those tires are starting to go away from him enough to make that spin happen. We had not seen any form of mistake from the Alpine driver beforehand. Yeah, that's very unfortunate one for him there. Thankfully, he's not hit anything and the track stays green. Now the battle between Johnny Damon and DWCJ here. It's for the 2nd spot still. I would think those medium tires still probably better than the hards on net pace, but those hards are really starting to come into play here. I think we're actually probably even. The crossover point not there yet, but it's about as even as it gets. It's down the pit straight they go for the 2nd spot, remember. Down the pit straight, Johnny Damon has DWCJ in his sights. And won't have enough to get him this time. We'll take a look at positions gained and lost. John the Prince, first driver on the softs on the way in. Is that a sign of the times for his comrades on the soft tires? That could very well be the case. That would be that of John the Prince, Sepulveda, Hemphead, and Urban. Sepulveda also on his way into the pit lane, so yes, that answers my question. Up the hill now through turn 4, Johnny Damon in pursuit. Any sort of mistake by the Williams here, and that Alfa Romeo will get himself promoted up to that 2nd spot. No, but it's a mistake for the Alfa Romeo. And by God, he's held on to the car, and no carbon fiber has lodged itself in the Armco barrier. He has somehow got that car down to stopped, didn't hit anything. And the race continues under green flag conditions after Johnny Damon, a massive, massive error, nearly ended in oblivion. It was just coming out of turn 5. That corner notorious with oversteer, but not necessarily on the way out like that. That's the first time of the day we've seen a driver make an error on that part of the circuit. He's gotten too heavy on the throttle coming on the way out. The car has jutted very severely to the right-hand side, and Johnny Damon now relegated. Well, I say relegated. He's not lost any positions, actually. He's lost 10 seconds to the back of DWCJ, but still third. Closest battle on track now is that of Manson, back to the AlphaTauri of Pontiac Bandit here, as well as the AlphaTauri of Curveball behind that of Manson. It's an Aston Martin sandwich with... Well, it was. As it turns out, they took the top part of the bread off, and now it's side by side between Pontiac Bandit and that of Manson. Manson's still down to the inside. Razor-thin margins on the way out of Turn 1. It's gotten very, very close there, and as they go down the hill towards Turn 2, Pontiac Bandit was actually into the grass exiting the first corner. He'll have the inside through Turn 2, and by the time they get out of Turn 2, Pontiac Bandit's got a half-second advantage over the AlphaTauri in question. We had a yellow flag there temporarily, and I think Curveball made an error of some sort. We're not sure where that happened. I believe it may have been coming out of Turn 1, but he is now 7.5 seconds behind the two cars which he was behind less than half a second not all that long ago. So this is now the closest battle on track outright, although I think we're going to have ourselves a round of pit stops here coming up shortly, so who knows with that. Still a half second here. Manson doing well. I would argue these two right even on pace for the time being. I mean, they're running pretty much identical lap times to this point. I think with DRS, Manson's got a good shot here. Oh, but Pontiac Bandit under braking in the turn-in phase. That car has kind of shimmied to the outside. And Walrus will go down the pit straight ahead of the AlphaTauri. DRS activated. Curveball into the pit lane. I'm assuming it's going to be the hard tires on for the AlphaTauri in question. Despite the error by Pontiac through 13, he stayed within half a second of the Aston Martin here, so he's done well on that front. John the Prince and Urban side by side, and John the Prince will get the Mercedes by the time they get through the first corner. John the Prince has pit recently. Oh, and Urban goes round. He does get the car locked down good enough on the exit of Turn 1. What I was going to say is that John the Prince making that move happen on his fresh medium tires he pit for 2 laps ago. Urban has yet to stop on his 13-lap-old soft tires, and that's a product of having that aged tire catch up to you there. He's gone for a spin exiting Turn 1 towards the inside, and he's locked it down enough. He's not hit anything. The track stays green. Now, that's the good thing about Hungary. There's a million ways to make an error here, but there's not many places to actually crash. So that's good if you're one of those drivers who have just made errors. You can actually find comfort in knowing that it's going to take a lot for to actually DNF from the session here. The 2 DNFs that we do have today are both retirements in the pit lane. So that makes the closest battle on track now actually that of John the Prince back to Hemp Head here. We're going to think, though, Hemp is going to make his way this time towards the pit lane on the 13-lap-old soft tires. Anybody else who has stayed out on the softs this long has made some sort of clinical error, as Hemphead actually stays out another time here. Urban this time will come in. That'll leave Charlie Gulf and Sepulveda battling it out here. John the Prince gets down to the inside of the Ferrari with ease as they make their way with DRS about 300 meters before the actual braking zone, and John the Prince makes his way up to 7th. Reimer now has a 6-second advantage over DWCJ atop the grid, which, in fairness to Reimer, has come relatively with luck here after that of Angry Walrus's drive-through penalty he had to serve for jumping the start here. So as they make their way through turns 8 and 9 now, Pontiac Bandit is half a second back to R. Manson. These two drivers yet to stop. 14-lap-old medium tires the piece of them as they make their way through 11 now. We're going to go ahead and assume that the oversteer will come into play here very shortly between these two drivers. If you're not on the hards right now, you're kind of doing something wrong, although what they could be doing, they could be trying to stretch these mediums as far as they can and maybe get their way onto the soft tires, a good old medium to soft transition. We don't see that too often anymore. And, well, the benchmark for that so far is that of Hemphead. This will be his 15th lap of the session coming up here on the softs as he comes into the pit lane to get rid of those softs. Way down to the inside of the braking zone is that of Pontiac Bandit. He's made a really late decision there to try to dive to the inside of R. Manson. And, well, in fairness to the AlphaTauri, he's done it cleanly. That was a hell of a dive from Pontiac Bandit. Of course, Manson gave him plenty of room, but either way, Pontiac has saw an opening and has gone for it and has taken the 5th spot there into the first corner. That one, I think, well, I don't want to say luck. It was a pretty skillful move, but I wouldn't count Manson out yet. Well, hang on just a minute. Charlie Golf has made a mistake. Either that or he's gotten together with the Alpine of Sepulveda going through turn 2. That car had spun round. Going through the corner there, he was side by side with Sepulveda for a little bit of time. I'm thinking maybe was there contact between the Alpine and the Haas. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not rightly sure. But either way, Charlie Golf spins down to 10th. Johnny Damon, the first driver on the... Whoa, that's a big drift through the pit lane. Johnny Damon, first car of the day, who started on the hards to pit here. And this is interesting. We're seeing drivers on the hards pit before those on the mediums. Well, it will be the medium tires either way for the Alfa Romeo in question. He should be good to the end of the Grand Prix. Down the pit straight they go. Looks as if Manson, well, unfortunately has relatively fallen behind that of Pontiac Bandit. The gap, which was, 0.4 of a second to begin last time, is actually nearly outside 8.5 of a second. Of course, he's now outside of a whole second, but behind that of Pontiac Bandit. That'll leave the closest battle of the day between Johnny Damon and John the Prince as they make their way down through turn 2. We're probably going to see some of these drivers in the top 5 pit here relatively shortly. Walrus may be at a good advantage, despite having to start this race with the drive-through penalty he accumulated for jumping the starting lights. He's going to find himself on the mediums in a sea of drivers on the hards, as, speaking of sea of drivers, Reimer, the first one to commit. DWCJ follows suit. Walrus, does he stay out now, or does he decide to come in at the tail end of these two? No, Walrus is going to stay out on track. Bold decision from the Aston Martin driver, arguably at the disadvantage. Reimer on the way in. DWCJ only getting into his pit box now. Walrus goes by. Walrus will overtake Reimer in the process. He's got about 2.5 seconds back to the Mercedes, so it's not going to be enough of a gap, really, to warrant having stayed out a little bit longer, although... Is Walrus hoping for something here? Johnny Damon and John the Prince and Manson. 3 cars tried to go into 1. John the Prince had gone down to the inside of Manson into the first corner. Manson was in the middle and had floated up the track to the outside, gets into Johnny Damon on the way into the first corner. 3 cars into 1, and that tight of a corner will never work, and it hasn't worked there. In all fairness to Manson, I'm not sure there was too much he could have done differently. Thankfully for Johnny Damon, he escapes with no damage. Although, in Johnny Damon's defense, Manson is on 17-lap-old medium tires. And look at this, he is still, there are some, perhaps, tempers flaring between these two. Either that or Manson's doing the right thing and letting him by, although, again, I can't really chalk that up to Manson's fault. John the Prince has gotten around Pontiac Bandit in the time being. Yeah, that's a really interesting scenario there. You got 3 cars trying to go simultaneously into the first corner. Did Manson panic and hit the brakes late? He had already... Now, mind you, they were on the way into the braking zone. We'll use John the Prince here again as he makes his way down. It was about here where we saw the contact be made. There was the tire mark you could have seen there on the grass on the left side. You just missed it, probably. But that tire mark is there. That's where the contact was made. That's what sent Johnny Damon into the grass. Well, thankfully, though, Johnny Damon is back up to the 5th spot. Manson has fallen down to 7th for the time being. Thinking maybe does he perhaps have damage on the Aston Martin? No, it doesn't appear that he does. Maybe some invisible side pod damage, which we can't see. There was noticeable contact between himself and the Alfa Romeo in question. So the battle for the lead now, 0.3 of a second between Walrus and Reimer. Walrus on 18-lap-old hard tires. He has stayed out since the beginning of the Grand Prix, has yet to pit. Has chosen kind of an overcut here. I think he's going to fall back at least to 7th. Well, I say at least to 7th. I think maximum of 7th here. We'll have to wait and see. Walrus decides to stay out one more time. John the Prince gets around Johnny Damon going through turn 11, but through 12 now. Johnny Damon around the outside, looking to make it side by side as they go through 13, but the Alfa Romeo has gotten ahead of the McLaren, and, well, very nicely done for Johnny Damon to take the spot back. We're seeing a lot of moves being made out of that turn 11. We don't usually see that happen, but we are here. Down the hill in towards turn 2 now. Reimer has taken the lead away from Angry Walrus, kind of as predicted. 20-lap-old tires versus 2-lap-old tires. Take your guess on who's who. So the gap from the leader now, the leader being Reimer, so give or take a second. It'll be 23 seconds back to Manson. And Manson's not really in traffic enough to believe that perhaps going to get held up by anybody. No, Walrus will fall back probably to that 7th spot. Don't think he'll fall farther than 7th. Sepulveda an additional 10 seconds behind that of Manson. Manson still has yet to pit as well as Pontiac Bandit. So maybe Walrus gets a good one here. He only falls to 5th or 6th. That would probably be best case scenario at this point for the Aston Martin driver, and into the pit lane he goes now. So Walrus into the pit lane. So into the pit box, we're going to go ahead and assume it's no. Are those the soft tires I see? No, I thought they were. It was just the, I don't even know. Medium tires on for Angry Walrus here. Exits the pit lane. Will go down to 5th. Will he lose the spot to Pontiac Bandit? Pontiac is making his way quite rapidly down the straight now, but he's not going to be anywhere close to John the Prince to make that happen. Or sorry, to Walrus. Walrus only falls to 5th. Sorry, in the break there, we did see that's Manson into the pit lane. Curveballs rejoined. Coming up closer to 10 laps to go here very shortly. Manson falling positions as he does pit, so Walrus actually gets away with one here. Only falls back down to 5th. We initially predicted 7th, but since then we've had our Manson stop. We were kind of expecting Pontiac Bandit to stop. He's actually not done that. We think Pontiac is probably going to be going to the softs here when he does decide to make his stop. That will probably be the end of the strategical decisions being made. The closest battle on track is that of Hemphead back to the Aston Martin of Manson here. In through turn 6 and 7. For the time being, Hemphead does not have the ability to match the pace of the Aston Martin ahead of him. Who is matching the pace is that of Angry Walrus. Down the pit straight, maybe. Looking at John the Prince here, seriously. Looking for the first corner, and he's not quite there. But now, and he's nearly had him there. He'll have him now. And one of the rare overtakes with DRS down the hill towards turn 2. As Walrus gets down the right side of that of John the Prince and makes the overtake happen. We do now have Pontiac Bandit into the pit lane, and it is the soft tires as predicted for the AlphaTauri in question. Charlie Golf pits as well. Urban and Pontiac Bandit were nearly side by side coming out of the pit lane. Urban has only just managed to stay ahead. It is now fresh soft tires to 7-lap-old medium tires. For that battle there, Charlie Golf, well, inaccurately says he was close to Hemphead there. Is actually 17 seconds behind. Pontiac Bandit may be having a look at Urban here shortly. Hey, just a reminder that coming up here in the next couple of weeks, we've got the we've got the redemption round next time out, the final installment of the redemption round at the penultimate round of the season at Circuit Paul Ricard in France, at Le Castellet. It's a track that I'm a little bit surprised they took off the schedule in real life. I mean, you think of motor racing, you think of France, and you think of Germany for that reason as well. I think a bit of a travesty not having races in those countries. There's no shortage of circuits in France to go by. Of course, you've got Magny-Cours, you've got, I mean, it would take some doing, but perhaps the Bugatti circuit at Le Mans, that would be incredible to watch happen. As to the outside looks Pontiac Bandit, he's not really going to have room around the outside. No, maybe he will. Lots of internets happening here. In towards turn 2, yeah, Pontiac Bandit's going to be close, but he's not close enough. Not only do you have, Magny-Cours, and you've got Le Castellet as well. As well as Le Castellet circuit, Paul Ricard, you've got, 100 different layouts they can use to that circuit? There's no shortage of creativity to be used with circuit Paul Ricard. There's no reason why that can't be on schedule. And as far as Germany, I mean, you've got the Nürburgring, you've got Hockenheim. Still a little surprised they don't go back to Hockenheim. I can see the Nürburgring, like, that wasn't the best of circuits. We raced there in 2020. It wasn't some sort of unbelievably, amazing race. Of course, it was headlined by a Daniel Ricciardo podium. But, yeah, I mean, go back to Hockenheim. As they exit turn 14 now, coming up to 10 laps to go here relatively shortly, we've got the AlphaTauri of Curveball into the pit lane. So the battle now, Pontiac Bandit, does he look to the inside this time? Yes, he does. He's gone heavy over the apex. He'll have to get that car really slowed down. He's kind of parked it on the apex as well. Good defending from the position being taken there from Pontiac Bandit. He's got DRS as well. Pace really even between these two as they make their way through turn 2. This puts the AlphaTauri up to 7th. Manson kind of in this battle as well. That's someone we haven't mentioned battling here. Oh, but he's gone quite wide that time. No, he hasn't. Never mind, I lied to you. Bit of jumping going on here on the screen. A little confusing, but it is what it is. Through the chicane they go. Pontiac Bandit leads Urban by 0.5. Urban leads Manson by 0.7. Oh! But that, I believe, was real, what we just saw. That was Urban going well off track, and now ahead, we have Johnny Damon to the inside of Walrus here for the 3rd spot, and Walrus has managed to go round the outside through turn 1 and has made his way back to the podium. This time by, we will have 10 laps to go here for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Manson, and Urban has gone round, whether via contact or mistake, but he has gone round either way, coming out of turn 13, and has fallen down to the 9th spot. Manson will go up to 8th, and I think maybe there was contact. He's now outside of 2 seconds behind a Pontiac Bandit. So closest battle on track is that of Johnny Damon of the Alfa Romeo, a driver who has been on the podium positions for the majority of the day so far, has now fallen back. Walrus has rightfully taken back his now podium position back to 3rd. As Johnny Damon, 3-second penalty for multiple warnings coming out of turn 11. And that could realistically end his chances of getting a podium here. You hate to say it. But you got a 3-second penalty on you. And credit to the rest of the grid, only one other driver, that being Hemphead, who was actually picked up a 3-second penalty. We've only had the one virtual safety car today. That was the that was the remembrance lap there for Knick-Knack. But other than that, it's been a very clean race so far. We've had spins, but we haven't had crashes. We did have a bit of drama with Walrus jumping the start. But after that, it's been a pretty clear in-and-out procedure of a race so far. Coming up on 10 laps to go. Reimer has a 9-second advantage, whether he's earned it or not. He's certainly earned being in the podium positions. Whether or not he's earned the win, you can leave to decipher. But either way, Reimer has a 9-second advantage over DWCJ. DW leads Walrus by 7. Walrus leads Johnny Damon by a net 5. And Johnny Damon leads John the Prince by 12, who leads Sepulveda by 19, who leads Pontiac Bandit by less than 2. Now one of the closer battles on track. We've also got that of Hemphead, who, despite having a penalty, is only behind Urban by 1.5 seconds. So we'll go along with Pontiac Bandit here as he looks to try to chow down on the lead behind a Sepulveda. Sepulveda being on the 14-lap-old medium tires. Oh, and he's had a hefty error. No, he hasn't. Goodness gracious, why do we keep seeing this? I thought he had a huge error there going through turn 11. That's not the case. As it turns out, he's actually stayed okay, but who is in this battle now, allegedly, is that of Varmanson. The leaderboards here show him at 5/10 of a second. I don't think that's entirely accurate, as now we've got an Alfa Romeo. It's Johnny Damon exiting turn 3. That car is spun round. And turn 3, one of the more narrow spots of the track. I'm actually a little surprised he has not hit anything coming out of that high speed of a corner. That is quite a miracle there for Johnny Damon that he has not crashed more significantly. He will not lose anything other than time back to Walrus, although John the Prince now within 3.5 seconds could possibly get that 4th spot. Battle now between Pontiac Bandit and Sepulveda is 4/10 as they make their way up the hill through turn 4. Another close battle on track is that of Hemphead back to Curveball, although that one you could argue not necessarily for position, as Hemphead has the penalty to his name. Five-tenths of a second between the two as they make their way through turn 11 now. We do have Johnny Damon into the pit lane. Perhaps did he hit something? I'm certainly thinking he may have, because it's a bit of an odd scenario to make this pit stop at this juncture. No, but it's just going to be the soft tires here. Yeah, that's a bit of an odd call, that one from Johnny Damon. He wasn't definitely going to lose the position to John the Prince. He was about 3.4 ahead of the McLaren at the time, but has decided to stop here, may lose. Oh, and we've got the Mercedes of Urban. Now, has he hit anything? No, but we do have Urban and Curveball around exiting 13. I don't think either of them have hit anything. We stay green. Sepulveda getting down to the inside of Pontiac Bandit for the 6th spot. And now Pontiac Bandit way to the inside. Because I think that may have been just a pure error there from Sepulveda. Nope, no he hasn't. You could see that, like, this isn't happening for anyone else but me at the moment. I don't know. Either way, 4/10 of a second here. Charlie Golf now side by side with Urban into turn 2. Contact being made. Urban will go round. Charlie Golf will go deep into the corner. And, well, I don't really know. Well, Reimer's going to lap his teammate here after the spin, but I'm not quite sure how to judge that one. I mean, there was definitely contact made between the two. How Urban's gone around spinning to the left when the car has been hit from the right, and Charlie Golf, I think, doing the right thing there, letting him have the spot back. That is good sportsmanship there from that of Charlie Golf, perhaps just taking the blame for the incident. Now down to the inside, Curveball looking forward on Hemphead here, up to the 9th spot on his fresh, soft tires. Curveball's had one hell of a day to try to navigate here. And to the 9th spot goes Curveball. Pontiac Bandit down the pit straight. Not going to have anything to Sepulveda. Urban is retired, exiting turn 11 in the virtual safety car only. For the time being, it's a hefty impact to the outside wall, and I'm a little surprised that's not a full safety car, because that car has clobbered the outside tire barriers there coming out of turn 11. That's the first true DNF of the day that we've seen, and now do we see drivers decide to pit. Hemphead's going to be one of them. Curveball, a drive-through penalty for speeding under the virtual safety car. Reimer stays out. DWCJ decides to come in. Angry Walrus does decide to stay out. This will promote him back to 2nd. John the Prince too far behind to actually make that decision, I'm afraid. Walrus having to back it down and try not to exceed a delta here, but he will get around DWCJ, and up to the 2nd spot is that of Angry Walrus. And Reimer better buy a lottery ticket and say his prayers tonight, because he's a bit lucky that that's not turned into a full safety car. There was more than 5 laps remaining in the Grand Prix. I have seen safety car come out on track later than that. Virtual safety car only, and it looks as if it's going to stay that way as the card's been cleared. Should be getting back to green flag here relatively shortly. The battle at hands now is going to be Pontiac Bandit back to Sepulveda once again for the 6th spot. How the Alpine has actually managed to stay in that position despite being on the 17-lap-old medium tires. Quite impressive. Curveball, drive-through penalty for speeding on the pit lane. We do also have, well, that was about it, actually. Curveball, a drive-through for him, although I do believe, has he picked up 2 of them? Because he had that message pop up when the virtual safety car had come out. Perhaps does he have 2 drive-throughs to his name? Does Curveball? That's a massive question, but his teammate of Pontiac Bandit in pursuit of Sepulveda now for the 6th spot. Sepulveda made it through to Q3 by the skin of his teeth, less than 5/100ths of a second, and now has the position to finish within the top 10. He's up 3 spots since his initial starting spot, and is looking in a very good position for the time being, has to be said. But now as they make their way through turn 9 and 10 here, 5 laps to go as the leaders make their way up through turn 5 now. Reimer leads Walrus by quite a lengthy amount of time. Sepulveda goes quite wide there, exiting turn 12. That may allow Pontiac Bandit to make something happen here. Oh, and that was a big slide from Sepulveda. Somehow he's held on to it. Pontiac Bandit will try around the outside here. Pontiac reacting in time in order to not careen into the side pod of the spinning Alpine in front of him. But now, down the pit straight they go. Pontiac Bandit will have the inside line, and I think this one may not be easy for Pontiac Bandit. Let's see, does he go deep into the corner? Sepulveda dives down to the inside, does the old switch back on the way out, and the Alpine keeps position. Wonderfully done there from the Alpine driver to hold on. Although, I tell you what, that Alpine may not be done with the mistakes here. He's in excess of 17-lap-old medium tires now, almost 20 laps as we have a yellow flag. And I think it may just be some back markers getting out of the way for Angry Walrus there, as Sepulveda either gives the spot back or goes too deep into the braking zone and allows Pontiac Bandit... Oh, for God's sakes. Oh, don't do this to me now. We're so close to the end of the race. Well, this game has given me nothing but trouble today, has to be said. But at least we will get to see the conclusion to this Grand Prix, perhaps, I'm hoping. As we have a yellow flag, it's not Walrus, it's his teammate of that of Manson having a spin there coming out of turn 5. Reimer will go past. Only a few drivers on the lead lap now, but the closest battle on track, that being... Well, none anymore, has to be said. And we were there. We saw Sepulveda was very close to that of Pontiac Bandit. And now we've got just 2 laps to go. This time by for Reimer to take the win here. Walrus will claw his way back to second after being handed the drive-through penalty to begin the race after jumping the start. Of course, it was going to be the parade lap anyways, but either way, he did leave the lights early. The game has penalized him for it. 2 virtual safety car on the day. The first one for said parade lap, and then the second one just now for the crashing Urban exiting turn 11 on lap 30, I believe it was. As DWCJ into the pit lane. Bit of an odd one here. Don't know why he's decided to pit. Perhaps to the soft tires, maybe take the fastest lap. That currently belongs to Johnny Damon. Let's see what he decides to do here. Does he have a wing change? Is it just purely tires? Yes, it is going to be just purely tires here from DWCJ. He will lose position, I think, at least to Johnny Damon. Let's see when he gets out of the pit lane here. Yep, Johnny Damon will scoot around the outside, although a 3-second penalty to boot here for Johnny Damon, so maybe is DWCJ within position enough on that to try to negate it. Well, I tell you what, he's struggling to get those tires up to temperature for the time being. He's now fallen outside of that 3-second margin behind the Johnny Damon. This is suddenly an interesting one here for DWCJ. I think he may have just kind of thrown away a podium. Either that or those tires were at a, kind of a point in time where they just really weren't going to live that much longer. It could very well be the case. Oh no, it appears that DWCJ may have left the session. That car is ghosted. Yeah, that could be the case there. Maybe it was just the game putting him on those tires. That is as about unfortunate as it gets. DWCJ, all credit, has had a wonderful race today. His AI will cross the line, most likely that 4th spot. But Reimer making his way around the Hungaroring for the final time in what, yet again, has been a very somber edition of the CCRL. as he makes his way into the worst chicane in Formula One for the final time here. Angry Walrus 8 seconds behind as he makes his way into the chicane now. Closest battle on track is that of DWCJ versus the time penalty occupied by Johnny Damon. About a second and a half between them. As Reimer making his way in towards turn 12 now. He's got 2 corners to go. Well, once again, it has to be said, luck does beat skill a certain amount of time, but what is known is that Reimer has absolutely deserved this win today. He's a very quick driver right from the off, and the Drivers' Championship leader will win another one today. He will take the win in Hungary. Reimer, again, I think can say he got pretty lucky with Walrus's drive-through penalty, but either way, he has put absolutely all the gap in the world behind the drivers behind him. And that will not come to the aid of a drive-through penalty. He has done that himself. That is a genuine win there from Reimer. But now, Johnny Damon making his way out of the final corner, and it looks as if he will keep his 3rd spot, as DWCJ not close enough to make that happen. Well, I want to very much appreciate you joining us here tonight. This one's for Nick Nack. We'll see you next week in France for the redemption round and the penultimate round of the CCRL Elite Tier season. For Hotspot, it's been a pleasure joining you once again here, and we'll see you next time.